Hello, and welcome to You Can Grow Your Own Way, a conversation for parents and carers of neurodivergent children. I feel so privileged you are taking time out of your busy life to learn all about the ways to interpret neurodivergence for you and your child. Remember, all advice on this podcast is general and may not specifically apply to your child, so we encourage you to also talk to your GP, paediatrician or specialist to see if what you've learned will help your family. Hello and welcome once again to You Can Grow Your Own Way, conversation for parents and carers of neurodivergent children. I'm Carly. Today we are doing part 3 of our puberty podcasts, and we're talking today largely around emotions. This is one I've been wanting to do for a while now, and Heather and I were able to come together again and coordinate the inclusion of an additional presenter joining us today. So the dynamic of 3 is certainly a loud one. I do apologise if there's lots of cackles that come over your podcast platform today. But it was definitely enjoyable to record. And oh my goodness, I definitely had some light bulb moments. So I hope that happens for you as well. So you have met Heather before on parts 1 and 2, but just a reminder that she works for Family Planning Australia, which is a reproductive and sexual health organisation. And she works in research and education, which aims to make healthcare and information about sexual health more accessible for people with disability and additional needs. You may have picked up that Heather is often on the front lines, actually presenting to parents, to teachers, and to disabled teens themselves, having conversations around puberty. So it's definitely amazing to have her participating so strongly in this conversation because she has real world experience she can share. But Emily is also joining us for this discussion today. And Emily comes with so much experience and so much knowledge and so much passion. And she was a great addition to this discussion. So Emily is originally from New Zealand. She holds a master's degree in teaching and learning. She's got over 9 years of classroom experience, with much of her career spent working in environments centred on supporting students with diverse learning and support needs. She is deeply passionate about young people's wellbeing and ensuring they are equipped with the knowledge and skills needed to understand and exercise their rights. Since transitioning from the classroom, Emily has specialised in sexual and reproductive health and rights education at Family Planning New South Wales, and she's collaborated with international ministries of education to integrate comprehensive sexuality education into national curricula, and has co-written teacher guides for multicultural contexts, ensuring this learning is accessible, inclusive and appropriate for all young people. So Emily is currently the team leader for Planet Puberty, a resource suite that, as we've heard, is designed to support parents and carers of young people with autism and intellectual disabilities. So I'm so excited to share this conversation with you. I remember I was on a high for the afternoon after recording it, and I hope it gives you the same buzz. Today, I think we're probably talking the topic that parents have been telling me they really want to hear. It's the very hairy world of emotions. It is a roller coaster for neurotypicals, let alone neurodivergence. So this should be really informative and probably, like all of our other puberty conversations, hilarious, because talking about puberty should be funny. It should be a bit gross. It should be a bit funny. We all remember what it was like. So I think I'm going to start by maybe asking Emily, what are your first thoughts when you go to talk about puberty and emotions?
Such a treat to be here with you all. I think it's one that I often think is really misunderstood and plays such a key role in setting young people and their parents and carers up, in that phase and in future phases. I think it's one that often people will say, oh, it's normal to have these emotional changes. It's normal to be moody. Often it's something that people make a lot of jokes around, but it's normal that these changes will occur. It's normal that there are changes in hormones that will influence mood, but it's also like something that we need to acknowledge is still really, really big for all families, and acknowledge that just because it's normal doesn't mean that you're in it alone. That, you know, you can still seek support, that you can still have these like tough conversations with other people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. That just because it's normal doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean it's going to be super, super hard either.
Mm.
Like it's not defined one way or the other because each child is individual. But by someone saying it's normal, it doesn't mean you can't say this is really tough.
Yeah.
Heather, what about you?
I just the first thing that comes into my head is if you don't laugh, you'll cry, right? Like it's okay for us to have a bit of a laugh. And it's funny if Em and I are out in the community talking to young people, and I don't know what it is with the word vagina, but it tends to get the giggles going. But like, let it out, right? Like, let's if we can have a little bit of fun and lightheartedness with this, why wouldn't we? But in saying that, it is definitely hard, and it never ceases to amaze me how in a group of people, whether it's young people going through puberty or whether it's parents and carers supporting young people through puberty, how no one's talking. So like everyone in those two examples thinks they're on their own. So it's really interesting, like in a school where it's based purely on the age of the young people, where like, this is happening here. Like this is a real deal here in this environment, because let's say it's a group of year 9s and 10s or something. They are all often sitting there feeling like this awful thing is happening to me and I'm so unusual, and these crying out bursts or rage, we hear people talk a lot about rage, is this default in them and them alone. So if nothing else comes out as day other than a bit of lighthearted banter, it'd be nice to remind people that this is something that we've all been through or we're all going to go through. You
And
cannot escape it.
we cannot solve the whole global issue of the shame around puberty. But hopefully having these conversations in a lighthearted and informative way has a bit of an impact. I really hope it has a bit of an impact on that, because, it's so unhelpful for something that every single one of us will go through, for it to be a topic that isn't discussed.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is like trying to do it perfectly, and there's like often never a perfect way of doing it, or waiting for the big moments. And I think that's something I really like on Planet Puberty, but that we have these conversation starters and just like building your confidence and being like, it's okay not to be perfect, but like these conversations are often things that like we didn't get modeled to us very well when we were young. Can't speak for everyone else, but we didn't get modeled super well, and then we're setting really high expectations for ourselves and how we do all these things. And we're really hard on ourselves when we don't meet that, but we're probably doing a pretty good job. And often just trying and like starting a conversation is like a huge and really significant first step.
And it's okay to say sometimes when you get asked a question, I don't know, let's find out.
Yeah.
What a beautiful thing imperfection is, right? Like,
Yeah.
I actually will jump into that a little bit more, but I think
please.
One of my favorite things around kind of how you can support your young person is modeling and modeling that imperfection, right? Because when we are so set on being perfect ourselves, we're modeling to them that they need to be perfect all the time. So modeling like, I don't know, but we can find out, and like, let's find out together, or like, I'm actually even stumped on where we could find that answer, is actually just modeling to them like it's okay to like find things really hard. And like, you don't need to be that hard on yourself when that's happening. So I think it's really, really important in those moments, and also like for all emotions. I'll jump in maybe more about that later. Just showing like we're human. It's not something that you, as an adult, should always have the answer, should always be able to regulate. This is like a part of the human experience.
Yeah. Very well said. Very well said. And look, I've actually got as our first talking point, and it kind of sits in this space here. Mood swings.
Sounds fun though, right? Swings are fun.
Do you know what I love about this when you really think about it is how visual that actually is. But it's such a term that is commonly aligned with early puberty. It's also commonly aligned with women in their periods.
Oh my God.
But, a lot of I'm watching it with two of mine right now. We were talking before that I'm in the midst of now two tween journeys. I've got an almost 10-year-old boy and an almost 8-year-old boy. And Mr. Almost 8, his system is priming himself for that first testosterone boost at the moment. So, oh my God, the anger and the physical energy. And Mr. 10, sulky.
Oh, buddy.
So sulky and so they want to find the words that they know get in there. Those words where they say the thing, where they get a reaction and they're like, okay, I do have power. I can do this thing. So, mood swings are well and truly in my house. Let's chat mood swings.
Well, I guess like a swing, I've got a visualize of a harness. But look, it's I guess and saying thinking about what we just chatted about first around that it's a normal part of it. So it may be a stretch to say to celebrate it, but to label that mood swings are a part of the puberty process. So hair is interesting. Often people cope with the concept of or the actuality of physical symptoms better than ones we can't see. So we can see and touch hair. We can smell BO, can't we? We can all smell it. Hooray, especially at the end of a school day. But in terms of something like mood swings, they're very abstract. And you've just described two young people in a household that are on a very different type of swing. So it's a really interesting and unique experience, but trying to let our young people know and remind each other that it is another symptom. It is another very real part of that change of going through puberty. And it's a part of, if we want to really push it and try for the celebration, I remember you mentioned one time one of your young fellas getting feeling pretty cool about a bit of leg hair. That maybe if Kedev and C feeling a little bit cool about mood swings, because it does mean that our bodies and our emotions are changing to be more mature and to grow up. But the journey to get there it's a pretty wild swing. It's a pretty wild swing.
Yeah.
That was a long waffly answer with lots of swing metaphors.
Oh,
so maybe Em can summarise it a bit more.
Heading through the jungle without a map. Like you just never know. And like, Emily, I'm going to come to you in just a second because I'm really interested to hear from you. But we were chatting before about how, the thing when you've got neurodivergent children who are going through these hormone changes, we get interesting responses to all kinds of sensory situations, all kinds of social situations. Our neurodivergent kidlets are triggered in different ways and they do get emotional. The world can be really hard for them. And so we get lots of big feelings. And then suddenly we start to see the interplay of hormones. And as a parent, sometimes, actually often, all of those techniques that we used to use aren't quite cutting it anymore because some of the motivation of that emotion is different. And the things that we used to do, they don't necessarily want us to do anymore. My almost Mr. 8, I feel bad calling him Mr. 7 now because he's so close to 8 and he's so excited about it.
We'll accept 8.
You will say Mr. 8. Literally in the last 2 weeks has gone from wanting a hug and a kiss when he leaves the house, when he goes to school, all of that sort of thing, to being like, nah, Mum, I want a fist bump.
Wow.
And, these things, that's part of the adventure. It's part of the journey for him as he's maturing. God, it gets me in the gut because I love my hug and kiss when he goes. And it's like, don't grow. But it's also a sign that some of the ways that I would have supported him and his feelings will change because he's now seeing himself differently and he's going to want something different from me.
Like the wildest thing is, sorry, Em, I'll hand it to you and I just want to say you literally have to learn to reparent. So like the metaphorical book that you get when you have a bub or a toddler and you maybe work it out. I don't know if I've worked it out yet and mine have passed out, but you kind of work out maybe a little bit of a routine and how to meet their needs. That book is now out of print, and you have to learn get a whole new book and a whole new bag of tricks, and that is very legit. It's not them trying to keep us on our toes, although it does. But if you think about like the sensory sensitivities because of these hormones, there may be a new list. So the last week list that you were aware of and you've nailed it and you've worked out how to nurture those particular needs doesn't work anymore. But that's okay. It's not you.
I think I would just add to that as well that like a lot of those things that have worked really well have taken like so much time and consistency and effort. And now they're older and you're like, oh, well, like we can really quickly get to that same point, but it's still taking the same amount of time and effort and consistency. And I think that's quite a challenging confronting feeling for parents to kind of feel that they're back at that pace where they're still needing to do all that scene setting and structure and support. And for me as well, like I think about puberty and I think quite like sciencey, hopefully not too dull ways. But like for me, I'm like puberty is you transitioning from like a child to an adult. Like that is like what is going on for someone's body. And I think with that, we always assume that things will get easier because we've gone past that phase, or that people don't need the same amounts of support because like, well, like we've done all that and now we're at this new point. But often like they're in that transition where they're pushing their independence and like you said, like doing things for reactions and like pushing into that adult phase, but they're actually still needing a lot of active parenting. And that balance is a really hard one to find, of like allowing for some like risk taking and independence and like forming your identity, which is all a part of becoming an adult, but then also like having those parameters that make it really like safe and keeping that really active role going. Yeah.
That's actually reminded me of something that I'd really like to mention, and it's something that I've seen with mine, and it's not uncommon, and that is that especially during the tween phase when it's all really, really new, a little regression in other spaces is really, really normal.
Yes.
Because the brain can't carry everything. So while it's trying to suss other things out, while it's trying to work out how to neurally prune and, what to do with all of this extra testosterone that's arriving, there are some everyday skills that you might see suddenly fall backwards. And that doesn't mean that they'll be backwards forever. It just means I need to park these right now while I work this out. And I say that firstly so parents can be prepared that if they see it, just embrace the fact that it may not be forever. And don't be terrified that suddenly they have gone through a permanent regression. No one can do everything at once. If you try to carry 10 shopping bags in, you're likely to drop one.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that does that.
What a try. It's okay to try. No.
I'm like, I'd rather take an hour getting this one load in than
100%.
take 2 loads.
Yeah.
The load, right? The load is very real.
There is a neuroscientist that I follow that I really like, Nathan Wallace, and I really like his terminology, just kind of talking about what you were saying about these regressions. He calls it like that your brain, or particularly your frontal cortex, it's under renovation. And what that means is like this space is getting improved, but at times it's going to be shut or unusable, and it's not that it's this like to be feared long-term thing, but literally because something great and new is coming, at the moment some things are not accessible. And I just really like that picture in my head and like the idea of it, this remodeling that isn't, or renovation that isn't always easy, but like explaining a little bit why that's happening.
No, I think that's a fantastic explanation. It's not as fear inducing. So I think one of the things we see with our kids that can often shock us is that emotions feel like they've been put under a magnifying glass or even a microscope. Like our sad is really sad. Our angry is really angry. At the same time, like our happy and our love feelings can be really huge too. I mean, if we watch a tween or a teenager when they've got a crush, oh my God.
Like no one's that in love on their wedding day, right? It's deep. It's deep.
Like heaven forbid if you're a teenager during all of the boy band and the One Direction days and all of that sort of business, because like the hormones would have been going out of control. So,
Relatable.
so do we have an explanation as to why everything feels so much bigger?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in a
Em
bit
got
nerdy
excited.
again. This is my persona today. And then Heather
Beautiful.
can come in and make it a bit more fun. So when we think about the brain, like I was saying, we've got our prefrontal cortex, and that does our like decision making, our planning, our impulse control, and our emotional regulation. And when we're doing pruning or our renovation, that's one of the core parts of the brain that is under renovation. And when it's shut, we use other parts of our brain. So the part of the brain that we're reliant on far more in puberty, if anyone wants to have a guess, is the
Frontal cortex?
no, it's our emotions. So we're not using the frontal cortex, we're using our emotional brain. So like the science of why people are feeling more or more intensely is because the emotional regulation isn't functioning as consistently to the level it will be when they're an adult, and they're actually like biologically engaging more the emotional brain. And they're also experiencing, you know, like these things that trigger bigger emotions. They're also like feeling super self-conscious, which is like scientifically proven. Like I think we all think it's like a unique experience, but it's like I think it's like every teenager is actually wired to think everyone's looking at them if they walk into a room. Whereas I think as adults, you know, it's 50-50. But so you're going through these shifts, and you know, you throw stuff like learning to drive in as well. I think we put about as many triggers on young people as we can.
Choosing your career.
Choose your career. We might pair this with parents going through menopause as well, and you know, just have some fun with all that. But I guess like the summary there is like they are using their emotional brain more. It's partly without the frontal cortex harder to identify emotions as well. And I remember finding this really interesting that when young people can't identify emotions, their default like reading of somebody else, and I think this is really important as well with neurodivergent young people, is a negative emotion.
Yeah.
So when we're not given much, they're thinking like angry is pretty much it. And you might literally be like worried or like staring into space, but they're assuming you're angry, and then they're meeting you with angry.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
and that's like really hard for us, but I think it's just understanding that there are tough misunderstandings where they're struggling to name their emotions, and therefore still actively really teaching emotions is important. So we have emotion stuff on the website, and I think some people might think that's like a pre-puberty activity, but it's actually not. I think it's almost like
all puberty
more important as puberty progresses, and also with that variety of emotions, right? We have like games, and then you can then adapt those and see how they work for then more varied emotions. And also not just like understanding somebody else, but understanding yourself as well. Because that's when we can start thinking about, you know, potentially some triggers or some ways to look after those emotions. And I think that's something Heather's really excited to chat about as well, that like masking comes into the emotional piece a lot as well. So like they're having these big feelings, and we need to, unfortunately, because it can be like hard at home, provide those spaces to give that release from the masking as well, and to really think of some structures that support them to feel empowered, and then make that a better process. But Heather, you can maybe jump in with all your cool
Before you
examples.
jump in, Heather, if you don't mind,
go, mate.
Something I wanted to say there that I'm finding really, really interesting, and that is around that frontal cortex and the renovations during puberty, and its impact on neurodivergent children because, or I should say people, because, you know, we're heading into the teenage space. And that is that they already struggle with engaging their frontal cortex, and that a lot of things can as they move up the arousal continuum, which they do very easily when you're neurodivergent because the world is a very overwhelming place, that your access to your frontal cortex starts to close down and become more difficult to access. So you've got an area that probably already has caution, tread carefully. And then suddenly, we're saying closed for renovation. So something that something that was already challenging that doesn't have strong neural pathways feeding into it is now out of order for a while. That's got to be really, really hard on a neurodivergent child and also on a parent who's attempting to navigate that. It's got to be massive. I also, as you were talking about, emotions becoming we were talking about them becoming extreme, but we're also talking about them expanding in terms of, what we experience and understand experiencing. And I want to look back to when you were talking about modeling, because I think, it sounds to me like it's a really good opportunity to wind it back to when our kids were younger, and we would say, I'm feeling angry right now. I'm feeling frustrated right now. I'm feeling worried, and not expecting our teenagers to guess how we're feeling, and to help them out by just calling it, and maybe also then giving them permission to try and call it.
Mm-hmm. The default point is so important. I mean, I think if I'm always thinking like, what's the one thing I'm going to remember from this chat, because that's how my brain works. And I just, other than a great time spent with you guys, but it's also thinking about, for me, it's that default, assuming that it's negative. I can't ever chat to you, Carly, without telling a personal story to do with the toilet, but and today is no exception. But
it's my badge of honor. I love that.
Thank you. I was in the bathroom yesterday. The door, the magic door was closed that set the radar off that someone had gone in there. And I was staring off into space, just trying to take a moment, and also being shocked of like, wow, how did you find me so quickly? But anyway, and then I got this extreme, like, why won't you look at me? What did I do? And I was like, hang on a sec. I was like, I'll just pop out for a minute. I'll finish in the bar and I'll come and have a chat to you. Anyway, and then we had a fantastic chat. But it was the absolute illustration of my nothing face. If an emotion can be nothing, it is the face of which I had. Like, I just drove and I'm a bit hungry, but also can I be bothered eating? But that face, assumed as being like disappointment or something. So really wild, but such an important thing for us to remember. I don't think that we can't do much about that face unless I get Botox or something. But like that those faces are going to happen. But being able and very willing to own it, name it, and say, oh, sorry, I wasn't trying to make any face, but I can see how that might have looked like I wasn't listening to you. What that face is a bit tired, a bit overwhelmed. Yep. And steadily discombobulated. So, yeah, I think it's really understanding that is such an important message for us to be aware of, and maybe not fix, but address. Definitely be willing to address it. Not be defensive about it, I think, too.
And I think sometimes noticing when they're responding, like in a way you didn't expect, like just the like, oh, like you said, like, I'm really sorry if I like seemed this way. How you came into it, I'm just really tired today, and that's all they're like that I'm bringing into this conversation. I think sometimes that default also comes in with questioning, like in the way you word a question. And again, like, you never want to feel that you're needing to plan every part of your parenting and like, how you ask how someone's day was, or like your face at every point, but being really tough on yourself. That's definitely not the point of this. But I think it's just building that empathy that like sometimes we're getting a unexpected response because of how that brain is functioning. We have actually kind of given them an unexpected social interaction that wasn't our intention.
I'm so glad I'm past like doing this stage myself.
One thing,
being a teenager,
so hard is like you wouldn't, and you can't say this to the young people because then it will sound like terrible. We don't want them to feel worse about it. But I wouldn't go back. couldn't give me $1 billion to go back. Like
No.
it's hard. It's really, really hard.
I
The
think one
insecurity. Oh my gosh. No. No. And the fashion
um,
choices.
one thing I think as well is like a shock to so many people is the puberty age as well. You know, like Carly, you were talking about Mr. Nearly 8, and
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people really went, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
I've got a Mr. Nearly 8. Like, could this be happening to me soon? Because people are going in their heads like, oh, that's a 14-year-old problem.
Yeah.
But like these hormones are happening way earlier.
Yeah, and because of
And
certain disabilities too, younger
yeah,
potentially as
and it's
well.
getting more and more younger as as well. So that's something just to be kind to yourselves with, because people weren't necessarily expecting it, and yeah,
There's
And
a
it's
really
not
interesting
overnight
piece
either,
of
is it?
There's a
Sorry,
really
Kelly,
interesting piece of research that I've read come up in places and read it quite a few times. And it's funny in my brain. I'm putting two things together. It happens often when I'm doing a podcast because, they seem to happen. But there's research out there about how a girl's sense of self-esteem and her confidence within herself, and then also the seriousness with which she takes other people's opinions of herself, that really changes at around age 8. So they see this huge difference of, girls who are doing their cartwheels. They don't care if they're good or not. They're drawing their art. They're colouring in. They're picking clothes that clash because they're fun to wear. Like all of those
Beautiful.
things happen. And then suddenly at around about 8, we start to see this sense of self-consciousness really come through and then start to really care about what other people think of them. And so listening to this conversation, I'm like, well, there you go. We're starting to see the impacts of the puberty process come into our girls' brains. And I think if we start to maybe understand that correlation, it gives us an opportunity to have an impact as well. So if we know that their brain is going to make them start to think those things, we can find our ways to authentically bolster them.
yeah. In some of the other work I've done, we often talk about like risk and protective factors. And I think when you hear puberty and you hear emotions and moodiness, I think a lot of people think of the risk factors, right? But I think and those are real and they're tough. But what's great to know is those like protective factors that can't, necessarily mean that someone wants to wear like fully clashing clothes until they're 30, like I do. But there are these things that you can support that play a really big role. And one of the things I love the most is aspirations.
Yeah.
So like your young person still having like goals, and they like, I don't know people's sporting ability, but like, for me it could be like professional netball. It was absolutely never on the cards. I was, in a talent ranked team 52, which was the bottom at high school. If you've got any guesses,
got a dream, mate. You got a dream.
But like that dream still means I went to practice. You know what I mean? And knowing your kids' dreams and like valuing dreams is so important, because when your young person stops having dreams, that's actually one of the things I would say is like, that's when I'd be suggesting you start reaching out for a bit more help. And dreams can be tough, like what are they? And they can shift, but like making space for talking about those and valuing them, even if they're not real, is one of those protective factors.
My
Absolutely.
5-year-old who wants to be a slashie. She wants to be a dancer / singer / vet.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Yeah. I think that's a
combined.
very neat
Will she combine those skills for the animals?
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so too.
Really
I'll be taking
hope
my
so.
animals if they are getting a song and dance for sure.
Absolutely. It's exactly the kind of practice I want to be going to. Beautiful. So important though, and so lovely. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think certainly with the Planet Puberty resources, we've got a lot that and more coming in the identity space. But I think we were talking about that age 8 before. Often when Em and I go out to an event, we open up one of our little booklets if we've got to show someone one thing because they're, look like they're in a hurry and they just show me what I need to know. And there's a page in the booklet which shows different ages and stages and what are helpful topics to be thinking out. And our first stage in this from 4. Just to give some context. So it's starting those conversations early. We talked last time, Carly, when we had the period talk, about imagine the horror of having blood come from your body if you had no idea that it was coming.
Yep.
And these extreme emotions, not even these emotions, it's no different. That feel very extreme. So having those conversations early and letting people know that we have a variety of emotions. But while we're having those conversations a bit, let's talk about what makes you uniquely you and special and things that might help you to deal with some of those big feelings. Like what makes you feel good, but also what are things that you can do when you're feeling that hot feeling of anger. Like for me, anger is quite, and it's interesting talking with young people that are neurodiverse, there's usually some physical symptoms that can come with the emotion. So if it's that hot anger or that cold anxiety but whatever that looks like, and trying to find these aspirational activities and dreams and the pathway to those. So, if it is the young person in this slashy, I forget all the things. I know there was vetting and
dancing.
Dancer.
Yes.
Okay. So like dancing, like, is that the thing that if you're having, starting to feel some pretty uncomfortable emotions, like can we pop on some K-pop Demon Hunters and cut a rug and get some of that, work through some of that. So I think like the goals and aspirations and the things that we can be to now to get Emily to her never too late netball career but whatever else, like we should always still be doing it, right? Like we should always do things that help us to feel good for pleasure, but good to help us out of work through a bit of a funk too.
And I think that's something that I'm really passionate about as well, which is just like your sense of identity, because I think like puberty is like one of the toughest times because you're making your sense of identity when kind of like everything in terms of like brain rewiring and hormones is like up against you having that as a successful experience. And one of the big things we find is like support and celebration of your identity is really important. And that's something that we're working on as well at Planet Puberty, that we're really trying to create more varied resources that are going to better capture everyone's like unique experiences, because I think it's really important, whether it's like your cultural background, your personal way of communicating, your sexuality, being able to feel safe in that is so important, because then you've got your people you can chat with, you've got your supported spaces, and it just is so critical. But when you're figuring out body image, dating, friendships, crushes
and they're intense, like we said before, like those feelings are big time.
It's so huge. It's so huge. I mean, I think back to the number of times that I would like be on my bed with my head in my pillow crying and I wouldn't even know why. I wouldn't even know why I was crying. And I'm like sobbing my heart out. Like I think sometimes drawing ourselves back and remembering can give us so much empathy for that as well. Because it's tough for parents to know what to do, especially when unexpectedly they turn around and they say something horrible in your face. But sometimes you need to go, it was tough. I'm glad I'm not there anymore, So look,
can I just jump in with one other like thought that kind of actually connects back maybe too far, but
okay.
I think
we love a loop around.
A big loop around there when we're talking about these ages as well is something that we often hear is parents really surprised that their child is experiencing all of these kind of aspects of puberty. And often a parent might say to me, but like, well, they've been delayed and so and this and this. So like, what do you mean puberty's coming early? So I think that that's a real like shock that it just can be hard because you're maybe not feeling as prepared, but it's really common. So just, yeah.
I think sometimes it can be really helpful to almost think about it as hardware and software.
I really like that description. Yeah.
You know, a lot of those stages where you're helping them through their executive functioning and accessing their cortex, that's software, you know, and the upgrades might not come as quickly. Sometimes they don't come at all, but that's not going to stop the hardware from working the way that it works. And, you know, we've had a couple of conversations in previous podcasts where we've talked about how it's a real danger zone to presume that just because your child is developmentally different to their chronological age, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be educating them, because the body's going to do it no matter what.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes emotions are hidden, so people feel like maybe they'll get by without that one, but it's like this is all kind of that parcel of what the hormones are doing. You know, it's things we see and things we don't. Yeah.
Yeah. And the big thing about masking, and we kind of sort of spoke about this before, the big thing about masking is that at some point that mask has to come off. And the more that mask stays on, the bigger the output when the mask comes off, because those feelings don't go away. They just get pushed down, and eventually they will come out. You know, the vessel to hold them is only so big. And I think we as parents know what that's like when we go through things and we're like, I'm not in a space to feel this right now. I can't feel this right now. I can't feel this. It's not convenient to feel this right now. And then eventually you have that moment where you're like, and that's going to happen for them as well. And we see it early on, you know, a lot of our kids will do that with things like school and social engagements where they know the expectation of behavior. They're so desperate to fit in that they program themselves to behave in a way that feels unnatural for them, but they know that is the expectation. And then when they come home, oh, those poor little darlings, it's so, so hard to see. And so, you know, if we're allowing those opportunities for that mask to come off more comfortably rather than exploding, it's going to be so much easier for them. You know, look,
I would just
please
say as well, I find to generalize, and it's so different for every person, really strong physical outlets are often awesome, of like really, like you said, like actively celebrating letting it out. Like I know like boxing, if you've got like that movement can be really fantastic. Vocally, like really like letting out big noises can be great. Stretch bands and weights, and like and then weights can kind of be like that, like I'm an adolescent, I'm like pumping some, you know. But like when I was young, my mum was all about like, you know, you can go and hit a pillow and here's a stick for your pillow. But sometimes like when you're feeling really like hot anger, like that kind of that physical aggression can be a great way, in a safe way, to actually let it out, because otherwise that masking, like you said, it just builds and builds and builds. And you don't have to think of all those ideas yourself. Like hopefully some of the schools you're in or your OTs as well can think about like your young person's movement, but not having to hold in is probably one of my big messages for teenage emotions.
I've recently moved from 470 acres to 3 acres. And for a lot of people, 3 acres sounds big. But when you've been on 470 acres, 3 acres feels very small. I'm very close to my neighbours. And I've got children that are very used to being able to come home in the afternoon and go out on the trampoline and jump and yell their feelings out. So, and I will say to any parent of neurodivergent children, get a trampoline. It's the best thing you'll ever do. But I think, you know, I don't know what my neighbours actually think we do to our children.
That's their problem, mate.
Because of the noise comes out of our yard. But, you know, it's when we're talking about the fact that they can't access their frontal cortex, we can't expect them to then rationalise their emotions inside their head. They're going to need to physically get them out, you know. Mr. 8 has just started. Sorry,
No,
Emily. I will come back.
keep going. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Eight's just started PT. So he's doing weekly PT.
Oh, awesome.
And I made that decision because Thursday really struggles with impulse control, with emotional management, a lot of those things. I will be honest, I am really nervous about testosterone through puberty because that's already a complexity for him, but I'm aware and we're working through it. But I thought, if you can go to PT, if you can go to personal training and you can feel in your body how good it feels when you do chin-ups, how good it feels when you're on the rowing machine, how all of those things actually connect you back to yourself. I hope that when you're 15, when you're 18, when you're 25, if you're having a really tough time, you will know I can do this and it makes me feel better.
It kind of goes back to the aspiration thing as well, of being like, I am strong, I am powerful, I am in control of my body, that's all the messaging you're getting from doing that.
Yeah, so good. I think that's just getting it out, not holding it in. And you guys referred to before, like when we grew up and our parents' generation was even on another level, like this holding. No offense, anyway, but like holding
It's
this, holding
true.
it in.
It's what they knew.
Yeah,
but it's also true.
Yeah, children and adolescents neither being seen or heard, holding it in. Not carrying on with emotions, putting some concrete in and toughen up, like gross. There's so much of that messaging that is still prevalent and that we've grown up with. So, like, if we're a science-loving gang here, like the science tells us very clearly that's not helpful. The science tells us, if you're thinking of these bodies full, if you can visualize literally full of hormones and emotions, and they need to get them out and they need an outlet to feel safe and calm and be able to regulate. Who cares about the neighbors? But this is what they need. I think that the challenge of that kind of, I guess, sounds so simple, is that for every kid, what that looks like is just a little bit different. And because of sensory sensitivities, quite possibly different to what it was at 5 than it will be at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But I think that's, if you've got these conversations going. Something I wanted to mention too, because this is unfortunately not always the common scenario, that there are advocates for young people that are so willing to have these conversations, set this space. I think it's important for anyone listening that maybe works in a school environment, or is working with young people that maybe aren't as supported at home as how we're talking, that if it's not coming from parents and carers in the home environment, we just want to make sure it's coming from somewhere. That's we work really closely with schools, with young people with additional needs, because we want to support the staff. But I can tell you, I worked with some people last week, and when I brought the puberty word up, it was very shocking. And I think, without being sure, I'm 99% sure many young people that we come into contact with have not had any talk from anyone about. We might be the first, or the school starting to bring it up might be the first. So as amazing as you are, and I bet a lot of the people in your networks are, not always the case, and that's okay, as long as it's coming from somewhere, if that makes sense. So who are the trusted people, and it's not always mum, dad, or carers. Like, it could be so many other people. It might be the amazing school support officer, or it might be the OT. But yeah, I guess that's a part of the puzzle, is finding, like, who are the people that can help them along and keep having those conversations to find what helps.
And even if you are, like, in a home where these conversations are opened and celebrated, that still may not be the person, and part of that is, like, often, like, the parents and carers are going to have to kind of hold these expectations, right? And I'm thinking of, like, the scenarios where you've got, say, like, one young person who has an outburst, or something happens, and they're really mean to a sibling or something, right? And you're like, well, the parents have kind of got this, like, structural setup on everyone's safety, but maybe there's another adult that this person can be really honest to without feeling they're going to get the same consequence or something.
Totally.
And they can just, like, so sometimes it can't be the parent, however, like, much you're building a really open environment. But what you can do is celebrate that they've found that other person, or, like, try and set up those things. Like, if it's like a family friend or something, like, be like, talk about to the young person how much they like those chats, tell that person to take them, for a coffee, or I don't so
Hot
matcha.
chocolate maybe. I don't know if the
Things
caffeinated
we don't
tweens is a
need
good
with
idea.
caffeine. I'm like, what's cool to do on a, but like, like beach walk, like whatever it is, to keep building that connection. Because just having that person is so important, and it's really never personal when it's not you.
I think that is the other side, isn't it, Carl? Like, it can hurt, like you said, with the hand holding or whatever. It can, when you try so hard to be that person, and like put so much time and energy at being like, I have to, I'm nailing this, supporting, and then they go, I don't want it. Oh, righto. It's a bit like when you make a beautiful 3-course meal and then only thing anyone
I'm
wants
not
is toast.
hungry.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
but I think
vegetarian.
exactly. So it's taking, it's really, that's exactly the other side. So right, Em, is like kind of, I guess, taking a bit of the ego and our own emotion out of it, and being like, if it's okay if it's not me, but who is it?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure you're getting it, getting the right support you need, and whenever you need, even if it's not me.
And we've sort of touched on this, and I don't want it to take over an episode, because it's really easy for what I'm about to mention to like take over an episode. But we've talked about where other information can come from.
Oh yeah.
And we've touched on the danger of allowing the education and the management of emotions and all of these things to come from online.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually more relevant in our parenting time right now than it's ever been before.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to find a porno mag underneath the bed that they're using to understand the body. And it's not limited in those ways that it used to be before. And it's funny, I was having a conversation recently with my husband, talking about some of the opinions that are out there that are being fed particularly to boys, targeting boys.
Oh yeah.
And how those can saturate so broadly. And I was talking, it was really interesting. I will say I've just watched Louis Theroux's Manosphere, and the thing that really came through for me was that the bros that they had in that documentary. I came across those guys in my early 20s. The guys who thought like that and talked like that. But the difference was that they didn't have a platform. And so it would be, they might share that with 5 or 10 mates, and they're kind of a little posse that's toxic, and girls stay away from them because they know they're toxic. And that's about as far as it would go. But now we've got this massive platform that they have access to, and they're commercially targeting our young, vulnerable, impressionable adolescents. And I say that because I just think that when we're talking about these safe relationships, when we're talking about telling them that it's okay to express their emotions, when we're talking to them about understanding puberty from both sides, male and female, we are being the voice that is coming up against those other influences. And I just think we need to be aware of that, aware of the importance of that no voice combating that is going to have much greater detriment than maybe an embarrassing discussion that they stew on and then, go, at least mum and dad told me. And I think it's just really important for us to remember that those messages are much bigger and much more available now, and they can penetrate much further than they ever have before. And we need to make choices knowing that, if that makes sense.
It's like, we said before about how hard it is for them. We wouldn't go back. Like, it's harder. It's harder now than it was for us. Like, what they've got up against to navigate in terms of trying to work out what information is true and good is so hard. And I say this in no disrespect to the work that Em and I try and do in the community. we're never going to be as cool as these guys. Like, it's so, no offense, Em, you are very cool.
Speak for yourself. I've just been talking science this whole episode,
Yeah,
Heather.
it
I'm
was
super cool.
Science is cool, mate. Don't get me wrong, but it's really hard, like, to try and compete with it as well. You know, when maybe Em's a bit more cool than me and it's different, but I know what the faces look like when I walk into a room because I see them, and it's not excited typically. You know, I try and win them over with, you know, maybe some lollies and a bit of humour, but like it is hard. You know, the various people in our team, like one of the things we're trying to do is just own it and name it straight away. You know, like, I know what you see online and where you get your information from probably looks a lot cooler than what we're going to do today, but you know, we're going to talk about, we promise you is true, and we promise you that we've got your best interests at heart. You know that we work for a trusted organisation because we've got our badges on. You know, maybe we wouldn't talk too much about science, but we'd certainly give it a little shout out, you know, that everything we do is based on evidence. But it's a hard sell now. You know, when we I was going to say Emma and I are similar in age, but that's not fair either. But like, we've both been working in the field for a long time, and it's shifted. Hey, Em, like, it's where, you know, when we both started working in the community, teachers, counsellors, nurses were the trusted professionals. And if you got a dodgy pamphlet out of the back of a magazine, it was pretty obvious it wasn't true. That's not the case now. So you're all right. It's but I think helping them to be aware of that and being willing to talk about it without judgment.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to not have that knee-jerk reaction of that's bullshit. But we can't do that. We cannot. We can think it, and with our very good faces, take a breath and respond a little bit differently. But I think we have to open up the table for being able to help them navigate it. For sure.
And I think I've just got like two things to jump on there. One that is, I think, just a lot of like empathy for young people, that algorithms are scary. Like, I have an awesome algorithm at the moment. I'm getting like targeted like community gardening days and like, you know, like the things I'm receiving are really good for me. But, you know, the young boys are often getting algorithms that are like kind of funneling them into tricky places on the web. And I think part of that goes back to, for me, because I'm really passionate kind of about like just safety. And I think like the online spaces are really tricky to navigate for parents and for young people. And that goes back to what we talked about before, that is on our website, and I think it's my favorite part, which is those conversation starters. Because like often, like you said, the full jump into like, here's what I saw on the Manosphere documentary is like, you know, like your kids don't want that. And it's really intense. But do it if you want to, Carly. But you know,
like 5-year-olds.
But the smaller conversations as they come up around like, you know, like, what did you think of that? Or like, I read that in the news and it made me feel this way. Like, what are your thoughts? Or like, are you seeing stuff on the internet that worries you? Because I've seen that stuff and it made me feel a bit worried. Or like, just made me feel that like, I didn't think it was actually like showing girls in a very fair way or something. And just kind of like them, like really getting them doing that engagement with you. But for a lot of online stuff, like the little conversations around like habits and just like, I don't know, the Manosphere thing, I probably struggle to fully get, but I do think in the core there's a little bit of discomfort when you're starting to see it, right? Like I'm assuming there's that bit of like, what, for a lot of people, and I think getting in on that what and helping them to navigate it if you can. Yeah.
It's tricky. That's really tricky, right?
Bless them. So, talking about parents and tricky, what can we do as parents to keep our cool, keep rational, keep our thinking brains,
I'll just get my magic
engage with
wand
our
ready.
children with empathy, be drunk all the time. But seriously, like it is a super challenging time for them. It's a super challenging time for us. So how do we prepare ourselves apart from a great wines collection in the kitchen?
Want me to jump in for my first reaction, and then I'll pass over to Emily for an eloquent science-based one. But my first reaction is timing. Yeah, we're still human beings too. And Emily noted before about there is a high chance in these households there are hormonal changes going at the other end of the scale. So things may be a little spicy across all fronts, right? So, and also you're just balancing parenting and life, which is a lot. So even the calmest person is going to have a day or a couple of moments in a day sometimes, or a day full of constant moments. So knowing, being aware of our own emotions and timing is really important. If we're activated, I think knowing what that feels like in our own bodies is really important. If you're feeling activated, that's not a good time for a sit down and having a chat with the young person at all. I think there's a tendency, and like a lot of parenting in the toddler years tells you to do this, to like after someone has a wobbly and tips over the table and throws the mashed potato at the window, that you sit down and unpack everything that happened and what you're going to do next time. Don't do that at that time. That's a bad time. You're pissed off. They are. You're probably not going to get very far. And in terms of, which Emma will explain much better than I will, in terms of what's going on in the brain that time, whatever you unpack then is not going to sink in with any benefit anyway. So let it go, de-escalate, get calm, let them have their time to do whatever they need to do to come back to a place where they, are feeling okay, and then have a chat. Or maybe you don't even, like maybe you just support each other and go, that was shit. Excuse my French. But maybe we'll have a chat on the weekend over an ice cream about how we can help each other when we're feeling upset. I think just honestly timing.
If anyone wants some letters, because sometimes people love, like an anagram or like some letters, regulate, then relate, then reason. So the 3 R's.
Oh, lovely. We should all be getting that tattooed on the back of our wrist for those moments. Be like, all right.
I love that.
I don't always do that. I try. But I don't always.
Well, and then forgiveness. Add an F for forgiveness. Forgiveness that we, again, saying that's that modelling, right? We're human too. And I'm sorry. I accidentally have shown you that sometimes I say some little colourful bits of language, and sometimes they come out at home, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
And my kids have started calling everyone boomers is a real problem after a little incident in a car park. So can't really work out how to get out of that one. But I made an emotional error in a heightened state in a car park, which is where they often happen. And now I'm paying a pretty high price for it. And what I have to keep coming back to saying to them is I had a bit of a wobbly and I said some things that I'm not proud of, but I lost control there a little bit, girls.
That modeling's so good though, Heather. Because
until they call you a boomer.
It's real.
But yeah, I think we're human, and be willing to be human, and with that modelling and timing would be my parting bits of my parting 2 cents. And what do you think?
That's so important. I do just want to reiterate the forgiveness part as well. And I think it's important and awesome to know there are some things like that are in your toolkit you can do. But like if you as a parent could just take a magic pill and say the right things and your child wouldn't have puberty, that's just not the case. Like there are things you can do that can be really helpful, but like there is still this hormonal storm going on, and there's still going to be these different challenges. So the forgiveness is so important. As Heather said, you can't address it in the moment. It's about that regulation. And I think sometimes that's easier said than done. I know sometimes in like public spaces, like I just, like maybe other people are judging me for not addressing it. And it's like, you've still got the mantra, like regulate is the first one. And it's the same as the screaming on a trampoline. Like, it doesn't matter, like, whatever is going on in anyone else's mind, like, the screaming on the trampoline is an awesome part of the daily routine, and just, let it be. The next one I've kind of got, 4 things that came to mind. So the first one was, we can't address it in the moment. The second one is pick your battles. Like, we've talked about there's so many things going on. You've talked about how there can be these regressions as well. We're not going to have everything. There are going to be some days or weeks that are just a lot rougher. and being able to pick like what are the core things that we're focused on, that we're being really consistent on, that my young person understands I'm being consistent on, because it goes back to a lot of the stuff that so many people listening to this are experts on from when their kids were younger, right? Like we can't do everything at once, but we're going to be consistent. We're going to be clear for ourselves and for our young person. So pick your battles. And I think one thing, because my background is teaching, and someone said to me that I thought was really helpful, pick your battles based on what is like the biggest frustration to you. Because when you address that, then that's supporting you to stay regulated. Because the thing that's like your ultimate trigger, whether it's them calling you a boomer, Heather, or, you know, something else, you're addressing that, you're getting less triggered. What the behavior may still be like like in a social place or a large behavior, but the thing that you're finding the trickiest is really valid in you being able to respond well to other things. So that's my second one, pick your battles. My third one is young people still really need sleep. They really, really need sleep. And I think that's really relatable. I'm really tired today. I don't know if you can tell, but like adults as well, we do not function as well without sleep. And part of the teenage stuff is they're needing potentially more sleep when their renovation and their wonderful improvements are happening. Also, their circadian rhythm shifts by about 2 hours. So that's meaning they want to go to sleep 2 hours later, and they definitely want to be waking up at least 2 hours later. And that's like making battles for you probably, and getting to school and all these structural things. So I think help with sleep hygiene is like a really great gift you can give. That's around like your expectations around like some people I think can hear that, you know, like an age and think, well, you don't need a bedtime anymore. And like, it's more around like that young person and your family routines. Like if that's helpful, sleep hygiene is very important for all people's well-being. And that is something that sometimes people need help with to know. And other things that help is like not having a screen in your room that's very tempting, having a break from screens before sleep, and like dark spaces. All of that is just like proven to help with your sleep quality. And it's still not a perfect science, but those are some things that you can help with. And my final point of like what you can do for yourself is knowing that you are so entitled to reach out for help. And that whilst people say like, oh my gosh, like all teens will go through mood swings and it's puberty and the hormone shifts, it still is like a big time of like isolation and potential anxiety and depression for your young person. And that has an impact for them, but also for you and your family. So there are like particular things that I would just kind of maybe flag now that I would, if these things are going on, then it's really good to reach out to a medical professional. Wouldn't go on like, you know, ChatGPT, you're entitled to your medical professional for these. So one is that like ongoing low mood, anxiety or irritability that's lasting like weeks rather than days. So when they're not coming back to their baseline for a really like, because people's moods are all different, but when we're away from baseline for like weeks at a time, that's a like someone else can give you some strategies at that point, and you don't need to carry that alone for a long time. Second one is if your young person is withdrawing from their friends and family and the activities they love, if their appetite or energy changes in a large way, then those are all times that you don't need to be alone in this, and that you are really entitled to chat with a professional. And if that professional isn't giving you a response that you feel is adequate, then you're entitled to go to another one. I think we've talked in the past about feeling that people can be dismissive of this, and it's like you have a right to the like correct information and responses for you. And if you're not getting it the first time, keep going. And Carly, I feel like you can probably speak to that better than me, but that was probably just the message I'd want people to have.
That I'm applauding. If I had one of those like party crackers with the streamers in it, I'd be like, right about now. I'm always advocating that. Comes up in almost every episode. You know, if the professional isn't listening, go somewhere else.
Keep going. Yeah, absolutely.
They're not a bank. It doesn't take mountains of paperwork to have to change everything.
Yeah.
Mm,
Just move.
mm,
And I
Completely.
think this is 2 areas as well. We've got neurodiversity,
Mm,
and then we've also got puberty, and they're
mm,
2 areas that people can be, like, not specialist in, but also that people can dismiss both. People can always say,
mm.
"Well, like, everyone feels a bit worried or sad in puberty." It's common
Yeah.
to, like, be sleeping more. It's like, "No, but you know your young person and you know their
Yes.
yes.
baseline." And
Yes.
neurodiversity as an extra element that you may need, like, to find
We've
different people to connect with.
Absolutely.
Mm,
We've talked in the other chats about like
Yeah.
knowing your young person's normal, right? Knowing what that typical
mm,
looks like
mm,
with the physical elements of the body, with emotions, with social situations, all of the above. You know, you're the expert. You
mm,
are, and them are they're the expert, and we're the co-pilot. You know, but
mm.
they, you as a family, as a unit, know when things are off and
Mm.
Yes.
don't if someone doesn't listen or you feel gaslit or whatever, absolutely keep going. Like, I promise someone will support you and help you along the journey, because it's so important to get support for everyone involved, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we talked before about some puberty changes too. There can be really serious mental health conditions that come as a result of that, and that is serious. And just because we can't see them, like hair or a broken bone or something, they can be very detrimental to a person's health and well-being. It is serious.
And
So keep fighting.
we really have to trust our guts, because we are talking about a percentage of the population that firstly, they're used to not being listened to all the
Mm,
time. It happens as a neurodivergent person. It's really common for you to be not taken seriously and then to feel like you can't say something. But also some have challenges with understanding those things as well. My Mr. 10 has the world's worst interoception. He can literally get out of the shower, apparently dry himself with a towel, be soaking wet, put his clothes on and wonder why his clothes are wet.
mm,
So, we're talking about people who don't necessarily feel the differences or notice those differences in their bodies, in their minds. So
mm,
we need to have our compass ready to say, how do we like, how does this feel for us? Are we still pointing true north, or have we gone off track here? And
mm,
if we believe we have, just trust yourself. Like,
Yeah.
mhm,
you know them.
mm,
You've known them for a very long time. You've been
mm,
reading their signals for years.
mm,
You're still reading them right.
Mm.
mm,
I think with that back yourself as well, is I think, when we're talking about the true north, I think some people feel probably because of like the experiences you've had in these systems that you have
Mm,
to have gone to south before it's like appropriate to reach
yeah,
out.
yeah,
And you do not need to wait
mm,
until south.
mm,
Is just what I'd
mm,
be. Yeah.
yeah,
mm,
yeah, yeah, completely. If it feels wrong, do something about it.
absolutely.
And when I was a teen, I had a good friend who developed depression,
Mm,
and was self-harming and staying in bed, not
mm,
showering. Their parents felt way too uncomfortable to do anything about it.
mm,
So they sat in that space until their early 20s before
mm.
they actually knew they could do something about it themselves. And yeah, just trust your gut.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Yeah.
And also like noticing the signs, it's not judgment on your young person, it's not judgment
Mm-mm.
on you. And it may not
Mm,
even mean it could actually be still like, oh, actually maybe this is a normal like hormonal mood swing, um but it's I think just when we talked about for your well-being, reaching out and having
Mm,
those conversations can be so affirming and grounding
mm,
as well. So it's not by doing that conversation, it's not meaning, that necessarily things are your young person does have depression or does have anxiety, but it's connecting you in and starting also even helping you know what else to look for, you know?
mm.
mm.
And going back to modeling, you're modeling for them that if they ever don't feel right, they can advocate for themselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There is so much support there, and I know that people can feel really frustrated by systems too, but there's amazing healthcare providers in our community.
Mhm.
There's amazing online support services like
Mhm.
Kids Helpline, Lifeline. There's lots and lots of different options. There's online support. The Black Dog Institute's got lots of great online
Mm.
supports and games. the sleep ninja. I feel like I'm just dropping names now, but I guess the point is that for every type of person in our lives, I feel so confident in saying there's something there that can help.
Yeah.
Depending on how you like to learn and what your needs are.
If I can just build on that, I think I kind of mentioned it earlier, but like a really big challenge for young people can be if during puberty they're forming their identity and they don't feel that their identity is being accepted. So finding like communities that celebrate that identity, you know, like if your young person is like LGBTQI+, like finding those communities and affirming that identity can be so critical for your young person. And that's what we're going to be working on in our new phase. So I hope people are really excited to see those coming. And, you know, if anyone has any insights, we're always so open to feedback. That's how the whole of Planet Puberty has been made, because we really want it to celebrate everyone's identity, because I think that is a really core part of how we, you know, travel with through all of this, and a key part of our well-being for life.
You just made me think of something so exciting. And on that note, so many years ago, we were doing a Planet Puberty chat with a school for young people with autism spectrum disorder, and it was with parents and carers, and which we haven't really talked about siblings today at all, which is interesting. But these parents and carers were really interested in more support for their siblings. And so this was a couple of years ago now, this chat. Fast forward to right now, I saw on the Planet Puberty website when I went on earlier,
Yes, the siblings page.
The siblings page.
Yeah. Woo!
Woo!
So this could be that moment in 3 years' time. We'll go, well, we were on this podcast talking about it.
But it was from that moment. It's from that moment of going, oh my gosh, you're so right that the team went away. And
I think that almost goes back to the manosphere as well. It's like, what are the new challenges and opportunities that are out there? And are we still being relevant? And are we hitting your needs? You know, like, because I think whether it is, you know, hopefully a trusted site like ours or a good friend, but having that person to journey with as a parent and carer is so important, because, well, for different personalities, I know I talk through pretty much every element of my day, but like it does do a lot, you know, to be able to just share with others like what's going on.
Yeah. So I've got school pickup looming. For real life.
Speaking of siblings,
it's just too easy to chat with you both.
So what I want to do, I'm gonna give you both a question. What do you think is the one thing that you want a parent to know at the end of this conversation?
Heather, you can go first.
Timing.
Yeah.
You're a human and they're a human. Sometimes those human emotions are not going to align, and that timing is really important, and that sometimes there's that deep desire to fix everything, and in the moment, and it can wait. It's okay. You know, waiting for well, let's not go for perfect timing. Let's go for better timing. Waiting for better timing is a really, really helpful thing that I'm trying to master, but that I think having in our mind, right at the front of our mind, is really helpful.
Awesome.
I think mine would be really kind to yourself. You know, like we talk a lot about self-care, and I think being kind to yourself when there are these big shifts is really important. And my other takeaway is imperfection is still fantastic. So the small moments and the small actions make a big difference. So just give it a go, give the conversations a try, give the modeling a try. Imperfection is still probably exceptional. I don't know. I lost it there.
I'm pretty sure I've said somewhere in one of my episodes before, and I still stand by it. Perfection is a myth.
That's, I think, what I was going for.
I may have even the first time I said it, I think I put the F word in there, because it really is. It's a myth. And if that's what we're attaining to every time we try and engage with our children,
Yeah.
we are going to fail because we're failing ourselves. We need to know that the fact that we're showing up, the fact that we're trying, the fact that we're committed that's the goal. That's the gold standard right there.
Absolutely. And like personally, everything I try to do perfectly is still on my to-do list because I'm still planning it and worried about it, and like whether it's from like this week or like honestly 2 years ago, it's still on the to-do list because it feels too big. And puberty is big, but it's all these little pieces that do come together in the end. Even if you have a rough, really big emotional day, it does. The hormones and the frontal cortex and your consistency, it comes together.
I have a thing that I say to my kids, and listening to this conversation, I'm going to save it and keep saying it because, as we've pointed out, there are a lot of early parenting techniques that are really great to use through the teen years to help provide consistency for our kids. And I will often say after a really tough day when they're going to bed, I'll be like, "Phew, today was a tough one, but tomorrow it's a brand new day." So, we put it to bed, we wipe the slate clean, and we start again.
Beautiful.
I love that.
Oh, ladies.
Carly.
I don't want us. We're going to have to find another topic. We need to find another topic. It was really fun and it was really informative, and I got to laugh, and I love when we get to laugh. It's so good to be able to laugh.
Heather is the best at that, isn't she? It's really hard, like coming up against Heather and being like, I don't have any bathroom stories.
You got me, guys. That's my coping strategy.
Emily, you need some more toilet stories, okay?
Look, there's no doubt about that. We could do a whole episode around toilet stories if you like.
Here's the reality. The puberty topic is so big that I'm sure we will come up with something else to talk about. But I feel really, really blessed that we've been able to share what we've been able to share with everyone. And from the parents listening, from hopefully teachers and other people who are listening as well, thank you for giving us so much education and insight from such a relatable place and providing us with such a great toolkit to move forward. So
thank you.
From my heart
Thank
to
you
yours.
so much, Carly. What a joy to chat.
Carly. Yeah, so awesome. Thank you.
Be sure to check the show notes on our website for any links and references. You can find us at youcangrowyourownway.podbean.com. And if you found this episode helpful, we would love you to help us get the word out. You can share the podcast, tell a friend, and be sure to click the follow or subscribe button so you can access all our new episodes. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, where we would love to connect with you. You Can Grow Your Own Way recognises Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of this place, now known as Australia. We're coming to you from Jabberung, Jawajali and Wadawurrung country, the country of our guest speaker, and from wherever you are listening. We respect the elders of the past and present, and we share our friendship and kindness.